Chaos in college football. Hey, everybody, Rusty Buckets here, still recovering from an incredible slate of football on Saturday. It started early at the 11 o'clock slot with Missouri traveling to Kyle Field and getting their butt kicked by a good Texas A&M team. More to come on them later. This is an embarrassing effort by Missouri, who I've been high on all season. I'll admit between y'all and as friends that I was wrong about them. Brady Cook, Luther Burden have not lived up to the hype that they had coming off of a 10-win season and a butt kicking of Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl. Missouri ain't it. Got embarrassed. You don't make the college football playoff getting ran off the field like that yesterday. Kudos to Mike Elko and the Aggies. That momentum continued yesterday afternoon with Diego Pavea and his electric performance in Vanderbilt's upset against Alabama. Coming into that game, Vanderbilt was 0-60 against top 5 teams. First win in program history against an AP top 5 team. And in Nick Saban's entire tenure as the head coach of Alabama, Vanderbilt scored a total of 13 points. They had 13 at the end of the first quarter yesterday, en route to a 40-burger. Absolute shellacking of the Tide. Vanderbilt was the better team from start to finish. All 50 of their fans deserved to rush the field last night and carry that goalpost down broad to the Cumberland River. Apologies to the 20 bachelorette parties that probably interrupted last night or Saturday night. Anchor down, huge win for Clark Lee and the Doors. It culminated last night as for the first time in history of college football, 2 top 5 SEC teams lost to unranked opponents on the same day. Tennessee and their young phenom quarterback, Nico Amalavea, traveled to Fayetteville. It was a very hostile environment. No offense to the Sooners out in Norman, but that was an SEC atmosphere Saturday night. 80,000 calling the Hogs, chaos, hostile, however you want to describe it. It worked in Arkansas's favor. They sold out to stop the run, forcing Nico to beat them with his arm, and he couldn't do it. It was a perfect summation on that last play, 4th and 5 from the 15, down 5, and he wastes too much time trying to find an open receiver, stepping out of bounds as time expired. It's a great win for Sam Pittman. He has the Razorbacks embracing the Hog, but that's a tough loss for Tennessee. I think the reality is a 1 or 2 loss Tennessee team is still going to get in because I think that the kind of that middle pack of teams is very muddy right now. Is Alabama better than Tennessee? We'll find out in a couple of weeks as they face off. Is Tennessee the team that's going to come out of that? What about Clemson? What about some of these other teams in that tier? It's very muddy right now, but the Vols' margin of error has shrunk to basically none. You're going to need to win most, if not all, of the rest of your games and win them convincingly in order to convince the committee that you're a better fit than an Alabama team, let's say. Upsets for the name of the game. For the 5th time in the last 20 years, 5 of the top 11 teams lost yesterday. 2 other teams that had minimal playoff hopes ended yesterday, with the Michigan Wolverines getting beat in Seattle by the Washington Huskies. Look, a 2-loss Michigan team is not getting in. They're staring down a 3rd loss to Ohio State at the end of the year. Doesn't look good for the Wolverines. Same with Lincoln Riley and his USC Trojans. Stop me if you've heard this before, but Lincoln Riley falters in a big game, right? He couldn't win the big game at Oklahoma, hasn't been able to do it at USC, lost to a mediocre Minnesota team on a last-second interception of Miller Moss in the end zone. That's a tough one to overcome. You've now lost to Michigan, who also lost yesterday, and that loss to the Golden Gophers. I don't think the Trojans are in this year. Speaking of that, man, I was rooting for JMU. I was in on the James Madison train. They came off back-to-back weeks where they scored 123 points combined in 2 weeks, only to hang 14 last night in Monroe, Louisiana, losing to Louisiana Monroe in ugly fashion. I think that kind of squelches any hope that they had of being that group of 5 team, because right now I think it's Boise State. All credit to Travis Hunter, but Ashton Jeanty might be the best player in college football right now. His first touch yesterday against Utah State, he housed for a 64-yard touchdown and never looked back. Boise State's only loss is to a really good Oregon team. If they win out, they control their destiny. But we live in a world where the Army-Navy game that last week of the season could be for that group of 5 spot in the top 12. Army and Navy are both 5-0 for the first time since 1945. They're playing a more modern style of football, and it's working. Navy obviously has the big win over Memphis. But if Boise State stumbles again, it could come down to that Army-Navy game for a spot in the playoffs. I'm here for it. I'll root for USA. I want one of those military academy teams to be there for the pageantry and the tradition. I mean, it's incredible. For the first time in any of our lifetimes, that game actually matters for postseason implications. What a wild turn of events. So this is the time of the year. Look, we had all circled the 12th and the 19th as weekends that we're going to define college football. I think October the 5th is one of those days as well. We've got some teams that are starting to heat up at the right time. Clemson, as dorky as Dabo Swinney is, he's got them winning. They're quietly 5-1. They're only lost to a good Georgia team. If they can run the table and win out, they'll be one of the top 4 seeds in the college football playoffs if they could get past Miami. Oregon, watch out for the Ducks. They got a chance this Saturday, the 12th at 6:30 to have a statement win as Ohio State comes to Autzen Stadium in Eugene. If Oregon wins that, they're in the driver's seat in the Big Ten and heading towards the top 4 spot. Another team that I'm big on that's heating up, the SMU Mustangs, man. Their first year in the ACC, they beat a good Louisville Cardinals team. Their schedule is very favorable going forward. Listen, Clemson is good. Miami is good. But SMU's schedule is very favorable. They don't play either of those teams unless it's in an ACC championship game. They have games left against Stanford, Duke, Pitt, BC, Virginia, and Cal. If they can come into the ACC championship game undefeated, why not SMU? They could be in the top 4 and at least in the top 12 if your only loss is to, say, an undefeated Miami in the ACC championship game. What a wild turn of events for the Mustangs. On the opposite end of that coin, Missouri, out, man. You don't get run off the field like that and still make the college football playoff. I think A&M destroyed any hope that they had, and I think the Tigers are done. Tennessee's going to have to show me something. They struggled to throw the football the last couple of weeks. That was an ugly loss to Arkansas. Nico Amalavea, again, is young, but he's going to have to show some growth if Tennessee's going to make that top 12. Otherwise, this could be a 3-loss team, and a 3-loss team like that's not getting in. Lastly, Oklahoma State, man. Mike Gundy has a great team every year. They got a quarterback who's 35 and has a mortgage. They had Ollie Gordon, who is MIA this year, is one of the best running backs in college football, and they still can't get over the hump. I think the Cowboys are out. They're just struggling to win consistently. And, hey, listen, if your goal is 8-9 wins a year, Mike Gundy's your guy, but I don't think he's going to lead them to the college football playoff anytime soon. My hype train team of the week, though, that I'm all in on, I spoke about them earlier, is Texas A&M. Man, what a massive win over Missouri. Again, Missouri's a fraud, but A&M is quietly now 5-1. Their only loss being an early season loss to Notre Dame. They have a very favorable schedule coming up. The only other tough game they have is LSU comes to town on October 26th, and they finish the game at home against Texas. You go into that game with one loss and say you're competitive. If you beat Texas, you're obviously in because you're competing for an SEC championship game. But even if you lose that game close and you're sitting at the end of the year 10-2, I think with wins over LSU, a big win over Missouri like that, and a competitive game to Texas, the Aggies find themselves in there. And shout out Mike Elko in his first year. I'm here for any and all Jimbo Fisher slander. So Mike Elko is doing a bang-up job with the team that Jimbo had. Hey, listen, thanks for hanging out with me this week, man. I enjoyed it. What a chaotic week of college football, and it's only going to get better from here. Buckle up. Next week, we have Oregon, Ohio State. We have LSU, Ole Miss. We have a lot of big football games. I'll see y'all back next week to talk about it.